Hey, it's me. Like I said in the chat, I'm gonna be listening to some of Void Money or Void Mon 3Y's videos for a bit. He makes really good videos. I'm into like Final Fantasy and PSO, and he is too. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into it. I'll just put him on in the background, and we'll just get right back into what I was doing. And he's also live right now, so if you want, check out his Twitch and I don't know, tell him I sent you. All right,
In the
let's do
late
this.
1990s, the Japanese RPG market wasn't just a genre, it was a duopoly. On one side, you had The Flash, Squaresoft. They were the trendsetters, the cinematic rebels who turned pixels into world-class poetry and FMVs into cultural milestones. On the other side of that coin, you had the Foundation, Enix. They were the keepers of the flame, the guardians of tradition, whose Dragon Quest series was so foundational to Japanese life that it famously sparked urban legends about national holidays. Dragon Quest was the giant for which Final Fantasy had to sail beyond the sea in order to conquer. Squaresoft was sitting on a throne built of materia and world-class ambition, but the problem with perfectionism is that it is expensive, and when coupled with ambition, it often leads to hubris. By the turn of the millennium, Square's ambition was about to outpace its bank account. Flush with the success of the PlayStation era, Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy, looked toward Hollywood. He didn't just want to make games that looked like movies, he wanted to make the first photorealistic CGI feature film. He founded Square Pictures in Hawaii, hired hundreds of animators, and spent 4 years chasing a dream called The Spirits Within. It was a technical marvel, yet a narrative ghost town. The film cost $137 million to produce and market. It made back less than half of that. Fans were left dumbfounded as they walked out of the theater wondering, was that really Final Fantasy? The movie played more like a hodgepodge of FF7 fan fiction meets Starship Troopers, even despite the voice acting chops of actors such as Donald Sutherland and James Woods. For a software company, these weren't just bad numbers, this was a lethal wound, and yet, in hindsight, the unsurprising conclusion of many a video game turned big screen. The loss was so staggering, it forced Square to record its first ever annual deficit. The perfectionists had finally gambled more than they could afford to lose. By late 2001, Square was reeling. Their stock price had cratered, and rumors of corporate takeover were circling them like sharks to a shipwreck. In a moment of pure survival, Sony stepped in, purchasing an 18.6% stake in the company just to keep the lights on. It was the lifeboat they needed, but it came with a realization. Square could no longer survive as a lone, high-stakes gambler. Across the street sat Enix. They were the pragmatic giant, the owners of Dragon Quest, a franchise so stable it was practically a Japanese utility. Enix had the money and the consistency that Square lacked, but they in turn lacked Square's global reach and technical edge. On paper, it was a marriage of convenience. In reality, it was the end of an era. To understand why Square Enix exists today, we have to look at the day the perfectionist met the pragmatist and the shockwaves that followed. Part 1. The Perfectionist's Downfall. To understand the fall, you have to understand the height. In the late 90s, Squaresoft didn't just make games, they made events. They operated with a philosophy of expensive perfectionism. If a background needed 50 hours of hand painting for a 3-second scene, they did it. If a score needed a full orchestra and a Latin choir, they hired them. This was the era of the A-Team, creatives like Hironobu Sakaguchi, Yoshitaka Amano, and Nobuo Uematsu. They were treated less like software developers and more like auteurs. This culture of prestige at any cost worked because the PS1 was a gold mine. Final Fantasy VII hadn't just sold copies, it had shifted the tectonic plates of the entire industry. Square was flush with cash, and with that cash came a dangerous level of confidence. They began to believe that the Square brand was invincible, that they could conquer any medium they touched. This confidence manifested in Square Pictures. Based in Honolulu, far away from the corporate oversight of Tokyo, Hironobu Sakaguchi began work on Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. This wasn't meant to be a video game movie, it was meant to be the dawn of the synesthesion, a virtual actor. Square poured $137 million into the project. To put that into perspective, the average blockbuster movie at the time cost about half of that. They weren't just building a movie, they were building a proprietary rendering engine from scratch. They were obsessed with the uncanny valley, spending millions just to make sure Aki Ross's hair moved naturally in the wind. But while that tech was revolutionary, the Square magic failed to translate to the big screen. Released in July 2001, the film was a philosophical sci-fi epic that bore almost no resemblance to the games that made the company famous. There were no chocobos, no crystals, and no magic. It was a movie for everyone that ended up being for no one. The box office results were catastrophic. The Spirits Within clawed back only $85 million worldwide. When you factor in the full cost of marketing and distribution, the losses climbed to a staggering $94 million. For the first time in its history, the perfectionist Squaresoft model that came out of the NES era's Final Fantasy was bleeding. Square's stock price didn't just dip, it cratered, losing nearly 25% of its value in a single day. The company that had defined the 32-bit era was suddenly facing a very real possibility: bankruptcy and insolvency. The Square way, that lavish, uncompromising dedication to art over budget, had finally hit a wall. The fallout was immediate. Square Pictures was shuttered. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the man who had single-handedly saved the company earlier with the original Final Fantasy, was forced to take a diminished role and eventually depart the company he helped build. The era of the auteur was being replaced by the era of the accountant. Desperate for capital, Square turned to their longtime partner Sony. In October 2001, Sony Computer Entertainment purchased a 19% stake in Square for roughly $124 million. It was enough to keep the doors open, but it came with a heavy price. Square was no longer an independent king. They were a protected subject. Sony's investment stabilized the ship, but it didn't solve the core problem. Square was still a high-cost, high-risk entity in an industry where costs were only going up. They needed more than a bailout. They needed a partner whose stability could offset their volatility. They needed someone who viewed the world not through the lens of art at any cost, but through the lens of sustainable profit. And that's when a long-delayed phone call from Enix finally started to look like a lifeline. Part 2. The Pragmatic Giant. While Squaresoft was busy trying to reinvent cinema with their Hawaii studio, Enix was doing something far more radical. They were being consistent. To the Western eye, Enix often lived in Square's shadow, but in Japan, Enix was the foundation. If Square was the flashy Hollywood blockbuster, Enix was the national epic. Their crown jewel was, of course, Dragon Quest, and it wasn't just a game series, it was more like a cultural institution. It was the game that defined the JRPG, and since 1986, it had barely changed its core formula. While Square was obsessed with the next big thing, Enix was obsessed with the right thing. But the most fascinating thing about Enix wasn't the games themselves, it was how they were made. Square was a massive internal machine, employing thousands of artists and programmers. Enix, by contrast, was a ghost developer. They were a publishing house with a remarkably small staff. Enix didn't build their games in-house. Instead, they acted as the ultimate curators. They would hire external studios like Chunsoft or Heartbeat to do the heavy lifting, while Enix provided the funding, the branding, and the ironclad vision of Yuji Horii. This strategy made Enix incredibly agile. They didn't have the massive overhead of Square, and they didn't have to worry about keeping thousands of employees busy between projects. This outsourcing model made them one of the most profitable companies in Japan. And if you think about it, it's kind of logical to see how they managed this success. By compartmentalizing, they were, in essence, able to focus on the smaller things they were good at, while the development studios worked on the nuts and bolts of the game. Delegation, and it worked like a charm. Meanwhile, Square was gambling with hundreds of millions, but Enix was quietly stacking gold. The sheer power of Dragon Quest in Japan cannot be overstated. When Dragon Quest VII finally released in 2000, after years of delays, it sold over 4 million copies in Japan alone. It didn't need synthespians. It didn't need a $100 million movie. It used 2D sprites on a 3D plane and look and feel menus from the 80s. And it worked, because that's what the fans wanted, and that's what the fans expected. Enix understood and perfected something Square had always struggled with: identity. They knew their audience wanted comfort, tradition, and reliability, where sequels to Squaresoft games broke the mold before it had even set. This inevitably gave Enix a war chest of capital. They were the pragmatic giant, financially bulletproof, culturally dominant in the East, but perhaps lacking the global technical infrastructure to compete in the upcoming HD era, and as such, it seemed almost like a logical conclusion that the two giants would see the opportunities available if they could only meet somewhere in the middle. Interestingly, the merger wasn't a new idea or a sudden hostile corporate takeover. The two companies had actually been in talks as early as 2000. But when the spirits within tanked and Square's valuation plummeted, Enix did the most Enix thing possible. They walked away. Yasuhiro Fukushima, the founder of Enix, was a man of logic. He saw a partner that was bleeding money and decided the risk was too high. He wasn't interested in a rescue mission. He wanted a merger of equals that could balance each other out for the financial gain of both. This rejection forced Square to reorganize. They brought in Yoichi Wada, a former investment banker, to clean up the books. Wada's job was to turn Square from an artist colony, which famed composer Nobuo Uematsu famously compared to a college frat house, into a business. He slashed costs, shuttered failing departments, and proved to the world and to Enix that Square could be disciplined. By late 2002, the perfectionist had been humbled and the pragmatist was finally ready to sign the papers. The two kings of the RPG world were about to become one. Part 3. The Marriage of Convenience. On April 1st, 2003, the unthinkable became official. Square and Enix merged to form Square Enix. To many fans at the time, the date felt like a cruel April Fool's joke. These were the Yankees and the Red Sox, or the Capulets and the Montagues. How could they seriously, possibly exist as one entity? But if you looked at the paperwork, the merger looked more like a respectfully polite takeover. Technically, Enix was the surviving entity. In the stock swap, one share of Square was worth only 0.85 shares of Enix. While the name Square came first in the new title, a nod to its global brand recognition, the corporate DNA was heavily slanted toward the pragmatic, profit-driven culture of Enix. Enter Yoichi Wada. If Hironobu Sakaguchi was the visionary of the old Square, Wada was the architect of the new Square Enix. He wasn't a game designer, he was a former investment banker, and he had a very specific vision for how this new giant would survive the 21st century. He called it polymorphic content. To Wada, a game wasn't just a piece of software you sold once, it was an IP, an intellectual property that needed to be mined across every possible medium. The goal was to minimize risk. Why bet $100 million on a brand new idea when you could spend that same amount of money making 5 different products based on a world people already love? This philosophy was the direct answer to the Spirits Within disaster. According to Wada's vision, Square should never again bet the entire company on a single roll of the dice. From now on, they would bet on franchises. Behind the scenes, however, the union between the two JRPG giants was anything but smooth. You had 2 radically different work cultures suddenly forced to share an office in Tokyo's Shinjuku district. Squaresoft's share of staff at the merger was massive, and they were used to a sort of prestige atmosphere where the top creatives held the power. Enix's staff was tiny, and they were used to managing external contractors and obsessing over the bottom line. Legend has it that in the early days, the two sides wouldn't even eat lunch together. There was a palpable tension. Square employees saw the Enix side as accountants who didn't understand art. Enix employees saw the Square side as divas who had nearly bankrupted themselves through their ego. And you can see this tension reflected in the games of the early 2000s. Projects became larger, more fragmented, and began to suffer from development hell. The unified vision of the 90s was being replaced by a corporate committee structure. To solidify this new corporate identity, Square Enix began to buy its way into diversity. In 2005, they acquired Taito, giving them a massive footprint in the Japanese arcade scene. A few years later, they would buy Eidos, bringing Western powerhouses like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex under their umbrella. This also meant Square Enix was no longer just a JRPG company. It had become a global conglomerate. It was stable, it was profitable, it was exactly what the bankers wanted. But for the fans who grew up on the Square magic, something felt like it was slipping away. The perfectionists they had grew up and loved had been tamed, somehow changed, and the pragmatist was now not only in charge of the dream, it was becoming even more disconnected from the art. The question we're left with is, in the quest for polymorphic success, did they lose the soul that made them kings of the industry in the first place? Part 4. The Square Enix Era and the HD Trap. For the first few years, the Wada vision looked like a masterstroke of ingenuity. The polymorphic content strategy was in full swing, and the flagship for this experiment was Final Fantasy VII. Instead of a single sequel, Square Enix exploded the world of Midgar into a film, a mobile game, a PSP prequel, and a PS2 third-person shooter. From a business perspective, it was genius. They were taking their most valuable asset and spreading the cost across multiple platforms. And at the time, the fans ate it up. Prior to the merger, Final Fantasy X-2 proved that direct sequels, once a taboo at the old Squaresoft, could be massive moneymakers. Kingdom Hearts 2 became a global phenomenon, and on the surface, the merger had created a powerhouse that could dominate the PlayStation 2 era. But beneath that success, a technical nightmare was beginning to take shape. In 2006, the industry shifted. The PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 had arrived, and with them came the HD era. For the old Enix side of the company, this was a hurdle. For the Square side, it was a catastrophe. The expensive perfectionism that had nearly killed Square in 2001 returned with a vengeance, but this time it was disguised as technical ambition. Square Enix decided they shouldn't just build games, they should build a universal engine to power all of their games, and they called it Crystal Tools. For Square Enix, this was the HD Trap. The company spent years building the engine while the games themselves languished in development hell. The asset creation pipeline that worked for the PS2 couldn't keep up with the demands of high definition. A single town in Final Fantasy XIII now took as much time to work on as an entire game used to. The pragmatic efficiency of the Enix model was being choked by the lingering prestige obsessions of the Squaresoft model, and the reality of the labor demands to produce AAA games in the high-definition era. The breaking point came in 2010 with the launch of Final Fantasy XIV. It was supposed to be the company's new utility, a steady stream of subscription revenue to mirror the stability of Dragon Quest and multiply the profits seen in Final Fantasy XI. Instead, it turned out to be a disaster of historic proportions. The original game was virtually unplayable. The UI was clunky with a multiple seconds input lag. The performance was so poor that it resulted in poor optimization and memory leaks. The content was incomplete and boring, the combat was terrible and outdated, and then there was the poor vision for quality of life. No market boards, no armory chest for gear, teleportation fees had unique currency. It was a victim of the marriage of Square Ego and the pragmatic Enix. It looked beautiful, but it was fundamentally broken and rushed to market as a piece of software. The reviews were scathing. The fans felt betrayed. For the first time since The Spirits Within, the company's reputation wasn't just bruised, it was on life support. Yoichi Wada, the man of logic, had to issue a public apology. The company took the unprecedented and incredibly expensive step of pulling the game and rebuilding it from the ground up. The merger was supposed to prevent these kinds of all-in failures, yet here they were again, staring into the abyss. While the Japanese side of the company struggled with its identity, the newly acquired Western studios, Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics, were thriving. Deus Ex Human Revolution and the Tomb Raider reboot proved that Square Enix could still publish masterpieces. But this created a strange bifurcated identity. You had Square Enix West making gritty, modern Western hits, and Square Enix East stuck in a cycle of decades-long development periods and engine production. The merger had brought stability in a sense, but it had also created a sprawling, disjointed empire. By 2013, Yoichi Wada had stepped down as president. His era of polymorphism had saved the company's finances in the decade following the merger, but it had also pushed its creative engine to the brink of collapse. The Union of Giants was safe, but it was time for a new generation to figure out what it actually meant to be Square Enix. Part 5. Conclusion: the sum of its parts. More than 2 decades have passed since the merger that changed the industry. Today, Square Enix is no longer the vulnerable, bleeding perfectionist, nor is it the quiet, invisible pragmatist. It has become a hybrid, a massive, complex entity that somehow manages to balance high-stakes artistic risks with cold, corporate efficiency. And yet, in that combination, it has brewed a whole new brand of issues. We saw this synthesis work its best in the redemption of Final Fantasy XIV. Under Naoki Yoshida, the company did something the old Squaresoft might have been too proud to do. They admitted failure, listened to their audience, and rebuilt a broken product into a world-leading success. Perhaps it was the ultimate merger of Square's world-building soul and Enix's dedication to a stable, long-term service. So, I have to ask, was the merger a success? If we judge it by the cold metrics of survival, the answer is an absolute yes. In an era where many of their 90s peers were shuttered, sold off, or reduced to mobile gaming shells, Square Enix remains a titan of the console space. They survived the transition to HD, they survived the shift to live services, and they survived the global consolidation of the gaming market. But outside of that corporatist view, for the player, the answer might be more nuanced. The merger fundamentally killed the B-tier Square game. The days of experimental, mid-budget titles like Vagrant Story, Xenogears, or Einhander largely vanished, replaced by a blockbuster or bust mentality. By merging, Square and Enix may have gained the strength to survive the modern world, but they lost the reckless, beautiful spontaneity that comes from having nothing to lose. And the blockbuster mentality they got in exchange may serve them well in the sense of always pushing the needle of what's possible, but it has raised a next generation level of uncertainty for the future. The story of Square Enix may be told as a story about the cost of staying alive, but it's also a reminder that art requires a patron, the prestige requires a foundation. Square provided the dream, Enix provided the floor. Today, when we see that unified logo on a loading screen, we aren't just looking at one brand, we are looking at a monument to a moment in 2003 when the industry grew up. The perfectionist and the pragmatist didn't just share a name, they forged a new identity that defined what a modern gaming giant looks like. Whether they are better than the sum of their parts is a question that every player has to answer for themselves every time they pick up a controller. But one thing is certain, without that marriage of convenience, the Final Fantasy might have actually lived up to its name. Thank you so much if you made it this far into the video, folks. I know we didn't go over every trauma that Square Enix has endured since the merger. Final Fantasy XIII Versus, anyone? And while it is true that we're in a spot where we're cautious about the future of Square, I hope we soon find a time where that caution is balanced with optimism. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today, folks. I hope to read your comments down below, and if you did happen to make it this far, perhaps you'll enjoy some of my other videos, some of which are popping up on screen right now. Until next time, have fun and stay safe, folks, and I'll see ya in the next video. Goodbye.
Okay, it's been almost 2 hours on this stream. Kind of zoned out for a bit, to be honest, but I think I am ready to start actually building a layout. Finally, after like weeks of doing all this, just for like a video, like a single video. I don't know. I'll probably redo some of these assets in later videos. But yeah, just to give a quick rundown, I tried to organize assets, but I realized I'm like, they're already organized in this asset browser, so I don't care. Like, I do not care about organizing everything again twice. These are important. They have to be at the center of the map, like of the 3D space. And the reason they have to be at the center is because if they're not, when I lay them down, see that orange dot? That orange dot? That's its origin point. This green plus sign, right? That's the origin point. If this building is off, it's not centered, then it's very, very difficult to move around and to place it down. So the reason I do this essentially is when I come to do an actual layout, like I'm not gonna do it now, but the idea being I can just drag and drop whatever the fuck I need to. Like, you feel me? Like, so it should be easier, it should speed up my workflow to build like an area, I don't know what to call it. Oh yeah, it's in the building. But that's all I'm doing, or that's all I've been doing this whole stream. Very tedious. Anyway, because this is at the center point, I ended up just shifting my whole scene off to the side. So if we look closely, as the camera moves and moves and moves, you'll kind of see them in the back there. So I'm thinking, like, there's a bit of an issue here, and it's probably just because I've been at this for 2 hours and my brain's kind of like mush, but if I hide them, that's one thing. Like, they'll be hidden from this, right? But if I do like an actual animation, a render, they'll still appear. And it's like, okay, why not just turn it off from the render? Well, I was testing that. If I turn this off from like this eyeball and the camera, like the viewport is the eyeball, what we're seeing, and the camera is the little render. So I just tested it like with this bus shelter, which is what I was doing. If I turn off both visibility and render, then none of the buildings I'm placing down show up because they're tied to these assets. So I've kind of devised a solution I've been thinking about. I'm like, what if I just cover it? I know that sounds like a really weird solution, but I'm like, I'm serious. Like, why don't I just, like, I'll just say as an example, like, why don't I just build out an area that kind of covers it? So like, even if the camera's moving and looking around, you don't really see it. Kind of like something like, I don't know, like that. So yeah, that's kind of just what I'm thinking right now. Like, I'll still do a proper layout when I'm done, but otherwise I was thinking of just shifting the whole animation because it takes place like right here. I was thinking of just shifting everything over, but I'm kind of lazy and I don't really like tweaking a bunch of stuff. Like, I mean, I haven't even started the animation, but I'm just thinking of a way to hide all this. And I think, oh, excuse me, I'm boring myself. I think I have an idea of what I can do to hide all this. For starters, I could just make a giant cube that just covers it. Literally just cover it, like. And then, I don't know, like, I don't know, it seems like kind of a shitty solution, but I'll think of something. I'll think of something to hide those assets, because I mean, like the actual assets here themselves don't really need to be at the center. Just my prefabs that I've done. And the prefabs come with their own lighting, right? And that's what's important to me is... Because I don't want to redo all the different lighting and stuff like that. I have no idea where this lighting... Oh. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, I'll continue this next time, but... And there was one other thing. I wanted to texture this sign, this highway sign, but I'm a little bit kind of done for this stream, to be honest, so... I don't know. It's fun, it's, you know, it's good stuff, but I'm gonna have to think of how to... I mean, realistically, if I just... just look at this real quick. Because I don't want to turn off the render thing. Like, I'll only just test something. So, if I turn off those assets... Going back here... You can't see this because I turn off, like, the... I don't know, my other render screen doesn't appear. See, I just put down a car. Yeah, see? Okay. That's weird. Oh, don't tell me that. Okay, it's that stupid... Yeah, I gotta test everything here. I gotta test things. It's what I just explained. The car won't show up because it's not that... the origin thing is not at center. So if I go back, find my car... So yeah, essentially if I just find the car over here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just fucking tired from this right now. But I think I know what it is. I'm just gonna test something really quick. No. Okay, yeah, so I know what I have to do. I basically have to make... Oh, that's interesting. So these are not in the... Okay, so... I'm just gonna do something really quick. I did the wrong one too. Let's put those in here. And then... Player one, cars, car, truck. Put this one into car. You think I would know which one is which, but no, I don't. So that should have it's empty. Okay, so let's try that again. So now if this is at center. Yeah, there we go. So it's basically what I was just explaining. So these do have to be at the center as well. Throw those to the center. And now I can place down my cars. And that's kind of how I want to do this this animation. You know, yeah, it's got its own little driving animation. I just got to figure out a way to hide all this so it doesn't appear on camera. So I literally might just put like a wall, to be honest. Like, that did not appear the way I was hoping it would. Something like that. I don't know. And it's just like a building or whatever the fuck, right? Just... See? Clever. And if I move it, you see all that stuff over there, right? So I could literally just put something in front of it and hide it. But the idea being like the layout, or not the layout, the setup is done, I would say. Probably just a few more things I was thinking of doing, like I wanted to create obviously more graffiti, like, you know, decals to do like grime and like tags. This was an example I was doing last time. Don't trust them. And but I do want to texture this highway sign. I don't know what, but I'll come up with something. And then from there, I can just start doing like the layout. Put down like boxes, and I'll put down like junk everywhere. And that's gonna be the fun part. Like, trust me, like I know everything I've been doing is so like tedious and questionable, but the fun part begins pretty soon. Like now it'll just be like you get what I mean. Like it'll be a lot easier. It'll be quicker to do like a layout of a city. There's still quite a few things I want to do. More decals, more background elements, an actual skybox instead of just like a black void of a background. Kind of works. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of works, but pretty much try to keep these buildings a bit modular too, so I can just kind of like stack different pieces together. I might do rooftop units. I'm thinking that might be a nice addition, but again, from this level, like from the ground, you don't really see it. Even on the 2D camera, like you don't really see the tops of those buildings, so maybe if I did it this way, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. But yeah, I basically ruined the initial layout. I just destroyed the city for a good reason. Never thought I'd be saying that, but here we are. But yeah, fun stuff, fun stuff. Where's my signage? It's probably in buildings. So it's not exact, like it's not perfect per se, but as I go through and start adjusting things, and I will be, it'll be a lot easier to, it looks up, yeah, I can tell that shine is supposed to be at the top left. Well, it'll be easier, it'll just be easier to like add little things to the scene. Trust me, it'll be a lot easier than I'm making it out to be. I think it'll be cool. Like honestly, I'm actually really kind of excited to start doing like the actual design now. If I can get it down right. I think it's cool. Like honestly, like it's very cool to have like a modular kind of setup to it. I don't know. I feel like all the work I've been doing in the last few years in 3D has kind of taught me a nice workflow. Like it's nothing special, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it really does work for me. And that's all that matters. Yeah, as you can see, just with like a few key elements here, I can like just keep adjusting things and kind of making it up on the fly, right? And again, I keep in mind that like this is an animation, right? So you're probably not going to see every element. And you probably maybe you will, but I'll do my best to hide everything. It's honestly, it's coming along quite nicely. I'm really happy with how it's turning out. But as I build the layout, I'll begin to notice, like an example is this object, this metal fence. So I can tell right away, because I've kind of done this before, this origin spot should be adjusted. And I'll do that right now. I can find the original asset. I wish there was a way to like select this and then like just find it, but I guess it doesn't work that way. Oh wait, I guess I could just fence metal, fence metal. This it's right here actually. Okay. All I'm gonna do is adjust that origin point. Not like that at all. It's not at all. I don't know why I did that, but yeah. And I just fucked something up. It's a work in progress. That's kind of how it goes. Oh wait, I know what I can do. I can just turn on this one setting, origins. Yeah, so that should be, theoretically, it should work. Should work out better now. Snap it to grid. And then just repeat. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Before I couldn't do that because it was like centered, so, and you know, same thing with this. Just demonstrate it really quick. And that's something I learned from my previous endeavor, my dungeon pack. It taught me how to do like modular kind of assets, and yeah, anyway, it's good stuff. I'm looking forward to, like I was saying, I'm looking forward to building a layout, but it's also going to be a bit of a, this fucking thing. Just going to place it down again. It's also going to be a bit of a hassle because as I build it, I'll notice little inconsistencies. Like for example, this should have an end piece as well. Like more like, I can do that right now as well. This was the original, I think. Yeah, object fence metal. Just take this. Take both pieces. Shift it over. Take it off. And then, let's call that end. And I don't know if it's my Blender version or because I'm streaming or whatever, but every now and then it just crashes when I create assets or mark as assets. So I'm being very, very careful not to fuck that up. Unassigned, so yeah, these were textures. I'll just throw them in there. Object fence. I'm like, why is this not in? I'm like trying to think, I'm like, why is this not in order? Theoretically it should be. Oh, okay, I guess I just had to save it. So yeah. Basically it's like, yeah, now I can just do stuff like this. Like, check this out. Snap it to the grid, rotate it, bring it in. And I don't know, I mean I might adjust everything else to be. This is what I mean, like when I snap to grid, now I noticed, I'm like, okay, well it's a bit low, and that could all be fixed. Actually, yeah, just 1 sec. No, actually don't give me 1 sec, I'm just gonna continue the example. I'll adjust everything like next time. Okay, so you can see I can just copy. I can take the end piece and just snap it on, just like that. So it's, because of the way it's built, like with an open end, I can just merge, I can endlessly copy them over, and then I can I just trailed off, and then because I was looking at the origin. Why is this fucked up? Anyway, yeah, sum it up, I don't know. It works and it doesn't work. Like, it works and it doesn't work. I guess it works because, like, you know, I'm just checking that orange dot, right? See how these two share the same orange dot? Technically, this should share that same orange dot. And they do. Okay, yeah, I'm just tripping out. Like they share it when I snap them to grid, and that's the whole point of it. Anyway, yeah, this is a very interesting lesson in modular assets, I guess. Oh, you know what? I think I know why. I think it's because I rotated something. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, okay, it's because I rotated it. Now, if I do bounding balls, then they still share. Yeah, okay. Nothing important. Nothing important. I'm just demonstrating something for some reason. I don't even know why. But yeah, it's been about 2 hours, 10 minutes. I feel like I could go on a lot longer, but I'll be completely honest with you. Doing what I did is so fucking boring. Like, it has a purpose. Don't get me wrong. But I can also be honest and tell you that just organizing things and renaming and filing them away into like folders, not the most fun. I'll be honest. The fun stuff will start next stream, I swear. We'll start getting back into texturing everything, moving those fun UVs, and then I'll come up with some graffiti tags. You know, I'll come up with something, and then I'll try and do an actual layout. Like I'll try and build something nice, and then we'll see where the little flaws are. It's like, okay, like, you know, like with this metal fence, the whole, oh, I should separate this, and you know, like, we'll make it as we go. But that being said, I did not realize this was see-through. That's kind of cool, but that is kind of cool. Maybe this, I don't know. I don't know, it's too much to think about. Like, is it see-through or am I tripping? Like, why does it... I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. Like Blender kind of fucks with my head sometimes. So it's not see-through. That's okay. Alright, you know what? I'm out. I'm tripping over nothing. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I kind of just want to end the stream. I don't want to do a whole thank you for watching. Oh, I mean, I do appreciate it, but. Yeah, still quite a bit of work. I do want to do a few more background elements, and I'm trying not to think of scope creep, but I'm like, you know, there are trees in the city, you know, there are like, because I don't know, I kind of do want to, I remember what I was thinking now. I'm like, maybe I'll take a break from doing 3D and I'll dive back into music for a bit, or maybe I'll just keep pushing and no, you know what I'll do? I'll keep pushing. I'm gonna make a layout, like a test layout, and then you know, it'll have like the grime or the decals and the graffiti and all that. And I think I might just try and take a mini break from the city stuff and start working on like some nature assets. Because I was thinking, I'm like, kind of want to try my hand at, you know, painting up some trees or like some shrubs, some grass. Because I don't know, I feel like just learning what I've learned so far. I'm like, I kind of want to try my hand again at that. And I keep forgetting. I have to do a material pass too, because not everything should have this bumpiness to it. Like without the bumpiness, it looks good. Like it looks really good in my opinion. But and then when we get this bumpiness, it just looks like ugly. Anyway, it's a work in progress, but you know, I'm really glad. I'm actually really glad I did all the boring stuff. kind of got that out of the way. Because, man, that stuff is just... You can, like, hear it in my voice. I'm like, I'm not even excited. I'm like, to talk about this. I'm like, shit is so boring. But it's worth it, in my opinion. Like, it's absolutely worth it to speed up your workflow. Like, I don't know what the saying is, but there's a saying that relates to it. I just can't think of it at the top of my head. What a way to end the stream, eh? Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying not to scope creep too much. I know I keep rambling like back and forth, but as I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, a couple of rooftop units, that might not be so hard to do, but you could just put like boxes on the top. I don't know, what the hell, like what are on people's roofs, right? I don't know. Maybe that's where I can put the nature assets, like, but again, I don't want it to be seen too, right? I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure all this out as we continue. So, but yeah, as you can see, the modular part of it really comes into play when just just sticking things onto like buildings, right? It doesn't even have to make sense, right? You know, it can just be like, well, I mean, it has to make some sort of sense, but it could even be at the end, right? You know, like it's at the far, okay, I don't know, it's at the far end, and you know, there's like two big windows. You could even do it like, you gotta turn off that. And yeah, another thing is I have to. Yeah, you can hear it in my voice. I gotta fix all these red things too, because basically it means that the model's like inside out, and it fucks with like the material settings. But again, you know, this is what I was saying, right? As we go through this, the errors will start to present themselves, and it's up to me to squash them. But it's all good. It's all fun. Like I'm actually enjoying a lot of this, but enjoying some of it, hating other parts of it. That's just the nature of my work. But hey, I gotta. I feel like there's something big I can say at the end of these streams, but really it's just like me rambling. And I'm like, don't really know how to end the stream, so. But yeah, I hope you get the idea of what I'm doing here, though. It's nothing crazy, to be honest. Like, I feel like it's not exactly rocket science, but it is just a lot of fun to let your imagination go wild and kind of just flip that over. Let your imagination go wild and kind of just build something. Oh great, you can't see it. Turn off the daylight. Well, the night doesn't have it. You get the idea. I mean, you can just slap things onto buildings and kind of just make it up as you go. That's kind of that's how I roll. To be honest, that's literally just how I roll. Yeah, there's nothing else. Yeah, that's kind of dope. I like that. It's not all like on the same grid kind of thing, right? It's a little bit sunken back, sunken forward kind of thing. Like, that's cool. I like that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. It's about 2 hours, 20 minutes, so I don't know, I'm debating if I even want to play the streaming bumper, because I'll just shut off the stream, to be honest. I'll play it for a bit. It's tradition, I guess, at this point. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you for watching, and like I said at the beginning of the stream, I was listening to Void Money's videos for a bit. He makes really good lore videos, to be honest, about games that not a lot of people know about. Like, I mean, I imagine a handful of people know about, but I haven't really seen lore videos discussing like Fantasy Star Online and stuff like that. So it's really cool, to be honest. I'm like a huge fan of that kind of stuff. But definitely check him out. I think he was streaming. I don't know if he's still streaming, but he streams. He's on YouTube. He's on. Just look him up. He's everywhere. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Should turn off the ambient music. But yeah, peace. Actually, I'm back. Real quick, I just want to say in this video bumper, that's actually the dungeon pack I worked on. Okay, now it's gone. Okay, peace. Bye.